Now, stay tuned for the following 13 Wham special presentation.
So I never really associated myself with diabetes.
I mean, I got used to it though because I've had it for a long time.
What it does in the Gila Monster now can prove benefit for people who have type 2 diabetes.
Welcome to this 13 Wham News special, Diabetes, a Community Concern. I'm Health Matters reporter Alexis Arnold.
And I'm 13 Wham Sports Director Mike Catalana. Nearly 1 in 10 Americans live with diabetes, and each year the disease kills more people than AIDS and breast cancer combined.
By the year 2020, just 6 years from now, more than half of all American adults will have diabetes or pre-diabetes. This is a community concern, and over the next half hour, we'll explain what diabetes is, and we'll tell you about scientific steps towards a cure.
We're also going to introduce you to people like Michelle Thompson-Taylor, a mom and hardworking professional who one day learned she had type 2 diabetes. 13 Wham's Norma Holland tells us Michelle's story.
When you picture someone with diabetes, Michelle Thompson-Taylor might not be who comes to mind.
I never really associated myself with diabetes.
She is the director of the Intercultural Center at our region's largest employer, the University of Rochester. Born and educated in Jamaica, she is now an active mother of 2 who works out regularly and watches her diet closely. A big reason why can be traced to that day 5 years ago when Michelle Thompson-Taylor learned she had type 2 diabetes.
When I think about it, it really was a wake-up call, but it was the kind of wake-up call that caused me to realize that this body that I have is a vessel. It's from God. And so I have to, for the time that I'm here, I should take care of this body. I shouldn't just let it go.
Diabetes is a disease in which the human body doesn't produce or properly use insulin.
Let's take a closer look at how insulin works.
Insulin is a hormone released by the pancreas every time we eat. Our body breaks down food into glucose or blood sugar, and insulin unlocks our body's cells so that glucose can energize them. Thompson-Taylor was first diagnosed with gestational diabetes when she was pregnant with each of her children.
The doctor assured me it was nothing I had done. Sometimes the body just does that.
Estimates show that gestational diabetes could affect as many as 18% of pregnancies, or nearly 1 in 5. An exact cause is unknown, and if treated, mom and baby can remain healthy. Gestational diabetes goes away after the baby is born. But mothers who had gestational diabetes stand a much greater chance of developing type 2 diabetes later on in life.
And so I started to think about, okay, what could I change now so that I don't end up with diabetes sooner rather than later.
But for Thompson-Taylor, the diagnosis came sooner than even her doctor expected, just 1 year after the birth of her second child.
1 year. Did the test right there in the office, just a little simple prick, and it was really elevated. And she was like, I think you've got type 2 diabetes.
It was then that more of the factors that lead to diabetes started to reveal themselves. So did her memories of how the disease is referred to. In Jamaica, diabetes is sometimes called sugar.
And so I realized the power of genetics at that point, because my father is also a diabetic. And I remember calling him and I'm like, you have diabetes, right? And he goes, yes, I have sugar.
A genetic, racial, and cultural link to diabetes in certain populations is supported by statistics.
The overall rate is 10% for Monroe County adults, but for African Americans, it's double that, 20%, more than 20% actually. So that suggests to us that even though it's a community problem, it certainly is a worse problem for certain segments of our community.
Hispanic, Asian, and Native American populations also have higher rates of diabetes. Monroe County Health Director Byron Kennedy is also a board member for the American Diabetes Association. He says health departments are now taking a different approach to the disease.
A lot of times you think about, health departments, you think about influenza, you think about pertussis, you think about rabies, you think about perhaps even preparedness, but you really don't think about chronic disease like cancer or heart disease or, for that matter, diabetes. And yet, when we think about, our country and, quite frankly, most of the industrialized world, a lot of what drives, people's, illnesses and their death rates are chronic conditions. So it makes sense in terms of health departments to sort of move in that same direction.
Educating the community, diagnosing cases, and connecting patients with treatment plans is now a community focus.
When I look at my schedule on my computer and it says go to the gym, I feel more compelled to get up and go to the gym.
Through diet, exercise, insulin, and frequent doctor's visits, Thompson Taylor has successfully managed her diabetes. And she has 2 reasons to be diligent in her approach.
I realize that I have that responsibility to them because now grandparents are diabetics, moms are diabetic. The chances of them being having diabetes is greatly improved. So I want to make sure that they learn early on healthy eating habits, being active, so that if we can even delay this, if it is inevitable, we can probably delay it for as long as possible for the kids.
Delaying the onset of diabetes or controlling it is worth the effort. The imbalance of insulin and blood sugar in the body has many long-term effects. Vision and foot problems can result in blindness or amputation. Kidney, heart disease, and stroke present potentially fatal consequences. I'm joined by 13 WHAM reporter Evan White because both of our families are impacted by diabetes. In your case, Evan, it's your dad who has diabetes, and we first learned about his diagnosis when a couple of years ago you had to go home to be with your family and your dad when he fell ill. What was that like for you?
It was very scary because I got a call late on a Sunday night. This was back in June of 2012, and I was told by a friend of my father's that he was being brought to the hospital and that he may die. It was that serious, and they said, you better rush back home to Boston and try to get to the hospital as soon as you can. So I tearfully called my news director and said, I got to go, and he let me go.
I remember listening to your story and feeling personally so upset for you because I know what it's like to love someone who has diabetes, and it's so hard because after he pulled through, and he did, you kind of stayed on his case a little, didn't you?
My father's had diabetes for so long, as I'm sure in your family, you knew for quite a while. You have the diagnosis. Then it's, what do you do about it? Essentially, I've been on his case since I was young, trying to say, you need to eat healthy foods, you need to exercise, you need to take care of yourself. And then when something like this happens, he suffers an infection, has to go to the hospital, you think, well, you weren't doing it, and now I need to step it up even more. And that's a concern. And you never really feel safe because you can't be with them, you can't make those decisions or even try to really do those for him.
Yeah, you try to express your concern while at the same time respecting the fact that they're adults too, and they have, they're able to control their own destiny. They have to be the ones who ultimately make those healthy choices. You can't do it for them.
No, you can be a nuisance, you can be a nag, and that's essentially what I've done for my father. Whether he likes it or not, I've tried to stay on his case a little bit. And hey, are you eating salads? Are you going for donuts? What is it going to be? Because you know you don't want to be in that hospital bed again.
The good thing is that there's hope. This is a controllable illness, a disease that can be managed, but we have to feel empowered, and we have to empower the people that we love, and that's really what it's all about. And I know for you, you love your dad. You just want him to be healthy. So.
I do. I want him to stick around for a long time.
Yeah. All right, Evan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're going to send it back right now to Mike and Alexis.
And very often when people think of diabetes, they imagine someone with type 2, perhaps an adult coworker, friend, or family member, like in the case of Norma and Evan.
But type 1 diabetes is diagnosed in children, sometimes shortly after birth. When we return, the story of 2 boys who formed a friendship from something they have in common. Both live with type 1 diabetes.
Mostly I try to help him keep track of his blood sugar.
And later, we'll explain why the venom in this lizard has the attention of researchers looking to cure diabetes.
There are so many mysteries out there, and when we're looking in nature, we sometimes look at things that don't make sense.
But first, a diabetes did you know fact from the American Diabetes Association. Did you know diabetes costs our economy $245 billion each year? That includes direct health care costs and indirect costs, such as missing days of work due to illness. Today, 10 children in the United States were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, but another 43 children were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. While type 1 diabetes only makes up between 5 and 10% of all diabetes cases, it is particularly prevalent in children.
And from a young age, kids with type 1 diabetes learn to count their carbs, monitor their diet, and prick their fingers to check glucose levels. That's a lot for anyone to manage, especially a child or a teen. But as 13 Wham Sean Carroll tells us, sometimes it's easier to get by with a little help from your friend.
Danny Young is 13. His neighborhood friend Angel Augusta is 15. They met about 2 years ago.
One of our friends that lived here, he introduced us.
Their friendship grew out of a common bond, type 1 diabetes.
Mostly I try to help him keep track of his blood sugars, because sometimes it's with both of us, we don't like to do our blood sugar stuff, but we always help each other out.
Angel was diagnosed as an infant. Danny's diagnosis came during a 3-day hospital stay at the age of 7. Genetics was a factor. Danny's father has diabetes, and Angel's mom was diagnosed at the age of 4.
You put the strip in.
The boys check their blood sugar levels 4 to 5 times a day.
You poke it with this, put the blood on the strip, and then it'll start reading it, and then it'll show you what you are at.
This time, Angel's blood sugar is low.
I'm 58.
So it's off to the kitchen for a snack, and he'll have a glass of juice. Sometimes the boys will know if their blood sugar levels are too low.
Start feeling either shaky. Sometimes I get like a weird feeling, or I'll be dizzy and like not focus and stuff.
When Angel was 10 years old, he had a scary reminder of what can happen if his levels are too low.
I ended up walking to my friend's house, and I just remember like feeling really dizzy, and I ended up falling. And like everything was really weird. I ended up waking up in an ambulance, and this other family, I didn't know them, they helped me.
If blood sugar levels are too high, well, they'll know that too.
Constantly have to pee, and it's like you don't feel so good. And then I usually just go down and get a correction.
The correction is insulin. Each boy has a pump that injects the appropriate amount. At school, that means frequent visits to the nurse's office for both boys.
I go in the morning before lunch to check, and then after lunch to give a shot for what I ate, and then at the end of the day.
Danny attends Spencerport Middle School.
Most of the nurses in our school, they know what they're doing. The main nurse, she has diabetes.
Angel attends Spencerport High School. Counting carbs, checking your blood sugar, getting insulin injections. It's stuff most teens just don't have to worry about.
Something I'm not good at keeping track of is my snacks, because I eat a lot of food.
But with responsibility comes maturity.
It was mostly a like why me type of thing, because you see all these kids who aren't like you, like they could eat all the candy they want, stuff like that. And then you're the select few who can't. But as you get older, you don't really feel like that anymore. You realize it's something you have to deal with as part of you now.
The confidence that grows from this friendship extends to their mothers.
I think it's great. It's really great. I love that they're, become such close friends. It's really helped. Angel's really helped them to try to stay on track. And I think it's good. They've, developed a close bond because they can relate to each other.
They're leaning on each other, and I think they don't even realize. We sit there and we listen to them.
We become very close also with the kids becoming close. You don't have to worry. I can send my son over there and I don't have to say, wow, is she going to know to make sure he checks his sugar?
Finally, another parent understands what I go through.
In addition to their daily responsibilities, Danny and Angel are constantly educating those around them, explaining what it means to live with diabetes.
It's something serious that you really should understand. It's not a game.
A lot of people don't know what it is unless like a family member has it.
If you have like a friend or a relative with it, just learn the basics so if anything serious happens, you could help them out.
As they look to the future, Danny and Angel are skeptical that there will ever be a cure for diabetes, but they are optimistic about advances in technology.
I feel like that they would come out with something like that. Because this is already pretty like advanced.
I do think they'll keep coming out with new technology for it, but I don't think they'll ever come out with a cure for it.
Both Danny and Angel are correct to point out that advances in technology are making it easier to live with diabetes. The monitors and insulin pumps they both use in many ways serve as an artificial pancreas.
Yeah, and technology is only getting better, but how far off is a cure? When we return, we'll attempt to answer that question, and we'll introduce you to a rare lizard that is providing valuable clues to scientists who are searching for a cure.
But first, did you know approximately 26 million American adults have diabetes? That's more than 8% of the population, but only about 19 million of those cases are diagnosed. Every day, researchers from around the world are hard at work searching for a cure for diabetes. And that search has led scientists to pursue all sorts of possibilities, Alexis. For example,
lizard venom. Yeah, you heard that right. The saliva and venom of a Gila monster actually led researchers to develop an FDA-approved drug that helps diabetics. 13 Wham's Kelsey Smith explains.
Their venom glands are here that you can see how enlarged they are behind the eyes.
You can find Gila monsters in the southwestern United States or at your local zoo.
Their venom, is primarily used as a defensive mechanism.
Years ago, a scientist got curious.
There are so many mysteries out there, and when we're looking in nature, we sometimes look at things that don't make sense.
In this case, it was a lizard's eating habits.
What the scientist was trying to understand was how Gila monsters can go for extended periods of time without eating. Yet they maintain a normal blood glucose.
A lizard that can go months without eating.
So this scientist looked at the natural history of these Gila monsters, recognizing, number one, they don't eat very often, and number two, it doesn't matter, because number three, their blood glucose stays stable with or without a meal. And if he can understand the mechanism behind that, he can possibly come up with a therapeutic for a similar syndrome in people, which happens to be type 2 diabetes.
It turns out that mechanism was a compound found exclusively in the Gila monster's venom or saliva. And in 2005, the FDA approved its use in a drug that is now helping type 2 diabetics manage the disease.
Instead of keeping glucose low, it keeps it from getting high. It manages it in the liver. So it's pretty awesome that this compound, what it does in the Gila monster, now can prove benefit for people who have type 2 diabetes.
For those patients, insulin is still part of the treatment plan. Diabetes research is also focused on stem cells that may one day allow patients to come off of insulin entirely.
The other approach is, instead of implanting cells, is trying to regrow beta cells in individuals with type 1 diabetes using drugs.
Dr. Richard Insel is the Chief Scientific Research Officer for JDRF, an organization focused on finding a cure for type 1 diabetes, the disease Danny and Angel were diagnosed with at a young age.
We have new tools today that are helping the boys that you're talking about and many individuals manage their disease far more effectively.
While not considered to be a cure, Dr. Insel is optimistic that technology will soon provide diabetics the next best thing.
We think that we'll be able to deliver artificial pancreas systems that will be able to take over the pancreas, this continuous ghost sensors talking to this insulin pump, that will eliminate the need to constantly check your blood sugar levels. You won't have to dose, and will even ultimately take care of mealtime dosing. And the progress that we've made really gives one a great level of optimism that we'll be able to deliver on that.
Each year, this community and others help raise tens of millions of dollars that goes to researchers working to cure diabetes.
While those efforts continue, we hope you now know more about diabetes and the growing number of people it impacts. People who we call friends and family, or classmates and coworkers.
Diabetes truly is a community concern. From all of us here at 13 Wham, we hope we left you and our community better informed.